I was born in the year of 61 in my home city of Cork. I fell through all the cracks of life. I was poor, hungry and broke. From my early days on Spangle Hill to the playing fields of the Fairfield, guess I was always destined to be at the end of it. How are you? My name is Hurley, and I'm living here in Castlemagner in Mallow, County Cork. And I'm here today to try and explain and give an understanding as to the reason why I wrote my book. It's called Shadows on My Shoulder, and it's a life about my life in the north side of the city of Cork, born and reared. My mother got married at 19, and by the time she was 36 years of age, she had 21 children. There was 3 girls and 2 sets of twins born before I was born, and they had passed away due to sickness and tuberculosis. And the only one I remember of the younger siblings would have been baby Michael, and he was 3 months old when he passed away. I had a good life in the north side of the city. My father and my 4 brothers all joined the Defence Forces. When I was 10 years of age, I started selling echoes around the city centre of Cork, and I sold them for about 2 to 3 years. And 90% of the lads that sold the papers with me, we all went to the new school on Cathedral Road. Then I carried on with my life, and I joined the Defence Forces myself. And I was in the Defence Forces for 19 and a half years. I was a chef. I was stationed in Cork, and I was stationed in Dublin at the Cork camp. And I had a good life. I really enjoyed it. And unfortunately for me, before I left the Defence Forces after 19 and a half years, I had a year and a half to go for my pension. And the reason why I left was because of my addictions, gambling and alcoholism. I decided to take the voluntary early retirement because I saw pound signs, and I got a 5-figure sum, and I thought that when I got that money that all my whole life problems would be solved. But unfortunately for me, that didn't happen. It made it worse. I was an echo boy, and I scraped for scraps of bread, but I was determined to find that golden thread. Oh, I sang a song of freedom, and I prayed to a distant star. I've got shadows on my shoulder, but angels in my heart. I took the voluntary early retirement, and I was living in Dublin with my wife and my 2 children, and we decided to move to Cork and buy the family home. So I bought the family home in Cork City, and when I took the voluntary early retirement, as I said, I thought my problems would be solved, but they weren't. I kept gambling and I kept drinking, and I only let my wife know what she needed to know. I manipulated everything at home. I told lies. I used to hide the post from the post. When the postman came, I used to throw the letters in the bin. I done anything to have a gamble and a drink. I made all my excuses under the world. My wife and my family, my 2 kids suffered because of my addictions. I remember one night coming home at 11:30 at night, walking through the place where I lived in the north side of the city, and my 2 kids were coming to meet me, and I asked where they were going, and they said that they were going leaving because I hadn't been at home all day. They were hungry. One of the neighbours took them in. It was lashing raining. They had no school done or anything. So after a few minutes talking to my 2 children, I convinced them to come back, and I swore to them that I would never do it again. So unfortunately, my wife heard about it, and she asked me then, was I having an affair with someone in town, because I was never at home. I used to leave in the morning at 9 o'clock in the morning when my kids went to school. My wife was in work at 6 o'clock, and I'd have it timed that I brought the kids to school, came home, cleaned the house up as best as I could, and there I was heading straight into the machines inside in town. And I started going in there at the start, we say, for an hour and a half, and I used to leave. I used to come home, get the grub ready for my children from school, do the homework with them. But then after a while, I started staying there for 2, 3, 5 and maybe 10 hours a day. And I was gambling and gambling and gambling, and I didn't give a care about anybody else, only myself. So after a while, my wife had sent my daughter into the city centre to find out where I was, because there was no food at home and the bills weren't being paid. The mortgage was going short, and I convinced my daughter to go away. I slipped her 10 or 15 pounds at the time, and I said, go on away and I'll meet you back here in an hour's time the overtime, the minute my daughter was gone out the door, I had got up and I'd left, and I went to another place where the gambling was, the machines, and this went on for a while. And when I went home, I only told the wife what she needed to know, what I needed her to know. I manipulated everything. And I remember one Christmas buying a computer for my kids for Christmas. And 2 weeks after the Christmas, the computer was mine. Although I wasn't in town, I was at home playing on the computer for mock money. And I was there for all hours a day. My wife would pass in and she said to me, "Are you going to bed?" And I say, "I'll be in a minute." My wife would be getting up for work at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'd still be sitting on the same seat. Gambling away for the mock money, looking for the adrenaline, the buzz, the anxiety. I was, my mental health went down as well because of all of this, and I didn't look after myself, and I didn't feed myself, and I didn't look after my well-being myself, and this is how bad the addiction got from me. So I came home one evening, and my wife asked me to leave. So I ended up in a place in St. Luke's, small room, no bed for 3 days, and I remember there was a load of timber in the corner of the room, and when I closed the door that night, the first night I was there, I believe that's when I reached my rock bottom. The loneliness hit me. I missed my kids, I missed my wife. I had a beautiful home in the north side of the city, and I'd thrown it all away because of my alcoholism and my gambling. When I played all the slot machines, I was happy, I was a king. But all these years I've wasted waiting for a win. But the gambling and the drinking soon took its toll. I was heading for disaster, lost to my soul. And I then decided to seek help. So what I done was I made a phone call to Gamblers Anonymous. And before that, I went up to a place above off Shannon Street. It's called Church Street, and I went to see a counsellor up there, and they asked me to have a look at my drinking problem as well. I didn't believe at the time that I had a drinking problem because I went out one night a week, but the only problem with that was I had that timed as well. If I wasn't in the pub by 8 o'clock at night, my whole night was destroyed. By the end of the night when I was drinking, I used to go up to the bar, and I used to throw loads of shorts into my pints. Being a glutton, I suppose, thinking I couldn't get any more, and I didn't have enough. And some nights mightn't even know people that's in the pub, and if I heard there was a party going on, the first thing I'd be doing is listening to what was going on, and I'd push my way in, and I'd start singing songs and doing the best that I can to go back to the house party. Remember when I was drinking as well, the karaoke machines came in, and I ended up going around singing, doing Gareth Brooks, impressions of Gareth Brooks, and that was another way for me to get out drinking as well. I ended up doing karaoke finals and karaoke competitions, and I remember singing in front of 1,500 people in the Rochestone Park Hotel doing Gareth Brooks, and that's what happened to me. Like it took my whole life away, and it took me away from me, and thank God I made the right decision. I went into the Gamblers Anonymous and AA rooms in around Cork City. And then I went for help, to Arbour House, and fair play, they looked after me very, very well. I was there for a year, and then I'd done 2 years aftercare, and my whole life was changed starting then. I got to know who I was, I got to know why I was doing the things I was doing. I got to stop doing the gambling and the alcoholism, but I had to go to my meetings. I went to 5 or 6 meetings a week, and only for me going to the meetings and the different people in the rooms that I met, I wouldn't be where I am today. My life has turned around completely. I've also had 3 children outside marriage, and I lost contact with my 2 daughters for 17 years because of my addictions, and I got to meet them in Liverpool because that's where they're living now, and I went to both of their weddings, and I was sitting at home another night here and in sobriety, and I got a text message through the computer wanting to know was I the Con Hurley that was in the Cork camp between 1978 and 1980, and I just turned to my wife and I said, "Talk about your past coming back to haunt you." And the reason why I got that message was because it was a son that I had 29 years earlier with a girl who we had split up because her mother and father didn't want me to stay with her, and she was 3 months pregnant at the time, and I didn't know whether it was a boy or a girl. And when I saw this email, my heart stopped, and I made a decision, what do I do? So I made a phone call, and that young fella spent his 29th birthday here in my home in Mallow, and I've been to his wedding as well, and we're in contact with each other today. My life then changed after that because I moved from the Northside of the city down here to Castlemagner in Mallow, County Cork, and I started working for Coomera Brewery Addiction Centre. I was doing voluntary work there, and I started going in there at about 9:15 in the morning, and I finished at about 3 or 4 o'clock in the day, and I'd done that for a year and a half. And the reason why I done that was because I wanted to try and explain to people, and to explain to the people that were suffering with the addiction, that there was life beyond addiction if they wanted it, but to have to work in it, you know. And I gave a bit of hope and strength to them, and the person that's over the transition, or the person that's over the treatment centre in Brewery, Sister Consilia was the lady that started all the breweries around the country, the Coomeras around the country. She started 53 years ago, and her birth sister, who's Sister Agnes, runs Brewery below in County Limerick. And then after working there for a year and a half doing the voluntary work, I was then offered a job with no experience in the transition house in Limerick, which is a house for 6 lads that's been through their addiction, that were homeless, and they were looking for a bit of strength and a bit of peace in their mind as to where they were going to go next. So I had a big responsibility. So what I done when I took that course was I ended up doing an addiction studies course in Arbour House, and 2 years ago I ended up going to UL in Limerick, and I graduated with honours with a diploma in reference to addiction and alcohol studies and drug addiction and alcohol addiction studies. And it was the proudest moment of my life, being able to walk down the steps in UL Limerick and get my cert with my family being there, you know. Then I decided to put pen to paper. It took me about 3 years to write my book, Shadows on My Shoulder, you know, and it was about the life that I've had and what it's like for me since I've been, when I was in addiction, you know, and what I'm doing now since I got into recovery. My life has changed completely, and my book is there, and all I'm trying to do with my book is trying to give some person that's out there struggling with addiction a bit of strength and hope, and a bit of life and a bit of happiness, to let them know that there is life beyond addiction, but you have to work for it. You know, yesterday is history for me, tomorrow is a mystery, and I only have today. That's the reason why I keep going to my meetings. That's the reason why I would recommend anyone that's struggling to make a phone call. If you don't bet, if you don't drink, and if you don't drug today, it cannot get any worse. I promise you that. But if you make the phone call and seek the help, it is there, and all you have to do is make the phone call. It's the hardest thing to do. Being honest in my life today, with all my surroundings and with my family, as I say, I only have this for today, and all I'm trying to do is to be honest with everybody in my whole dealings of my life today, you know. And I'd like to say thanks to everybody in my family, and especially my wife and my children, who supported me through my ups and downs of life, you know. And I had a ripple effect when I was out there in my addictions, but has a bigger ripple effect today, because today they can see the ocean, and today they can see the rainbows at the end of the ocean. Because why? Because I'm away from my addictions today, and I'm hoping that somebody will enjoy the read. And thank you very much for giving me the pleasure of doing this video with Tom today. Thank you.
On a lonesome trail, so I put my trust in a higher power, submitted to its plan, and waited to be rescued and taken by the hand. I was an echo boy, and I scraped for scraps of bread, but I was determined to find that golden thread. I sang a song of freedom, and I prayed to a distant star. I've got shadows on my shoulder, but angels in my heart. Now my life's back on track, now I've seen the light, and that winding road to happiness is mine and by right. Tomorrow now's just another day on that narrow path. I may have had shadows on my shoulder, but I've got angels in my heart. I was an echo boy, and I scraped for scraps of bread, but I was determined to find that golden thread. Oh, I sang a song of freedom, and I prayed to a distant star. I've got shadows on my shoulder, but angels in my heart. Oh, I sang a song of freedom, and I prayed to a distant star. I've got shadows on my shoulders, but angels in my heart.